There's this purification that goes with Hygieia and with Virgo. And then the whole small and simple things, the stuff you do on the daily to maintain your well-being. It's very, very sixth house energy. So it just made sense logically to me for Hygieia to rule Virgo and the sixth house.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy Podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, Jaye Anne, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kayelee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for. Hello and welcome to another episode of Feminine Alchemy. I'm Jaye Anne, I'm here as your host with Kayelee Rose and Julie Dean Richards. Say hello, ladies.
Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Happy to see you, Kayelee.
I'm happy to see you too.
And today we are traveling along with our feminine asteroid goddess arc that we sort of put down for a little while, but we are picking it back up again with Hygieia, and this is going to be so much fun. Every time we have worked with an asteroid goddess, there's just been a very deep unfolding of that goddess, of that point, and it's been super powerful for me personally. So I get to benefit from all of this, and hooray. But you do too. So let's just jump right into it. No holds barred. Kayelee, tell us about the astronomical information about Hygieia and where does she live and why do we care?
All right. So she lives in the kind of the outer part of the main asteroid belt. She is the 10th asteroid that was discovered. She was discovered by Aníbal de Gaspares. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but there was a bunch of to-do about what to name her because the person who discovered her, he gave the mathematician who helped him discover her the opportunity to name the asteroid. And they kind of went back and forth. And the mathematician, whose name I can't remember, I apologize, mathematician, you matter too. But he wanted to name her Hygieia. And then in, I think, England, there was somebody who's like, oh, they discovered another asteroid. We should name it. And I can't remember what they wanted to name it, but they wanted to name it something else entirely. There was kind of this back and forth a little bit, but then the organization that's in charge of keeping track of the names of asteroids, they were like, well, it's already been named Hygieia and it's already been spelled this way and it's already using this symbol, so we're just going to stick with that. So there's some confusion here. It kind of makes me wonder if maybe Mercury was retrograde when Hygieia was discovered, which would be really fascinating. Because Mercury traditionally rules Virgo, but in resonant astrology, Hygieia rules Virgo. So I'm going to have to go back and see if I can figure out what Mercury was up to when Hygieia was discovered. The actual asteroid of Hygieia is very, very similar to the asteroid Ceres. It's actually been considered changing its classification from an asteroid to a dwarf planet. And because of all the similarities between Hygieia and Ceres, they believe that they have a similar origin story, which is really fascinating to me, especially when we start getting into the mythology. Let's see here. Hygieia is one of the larger asteroids, but definitely not nearly as large as Ceres and some of the other main asteroids. Julie, did you have anything else astronomically that you wanted to share about Hygieia?
I do. I have a couple things. One is that the big thing about Hygieia is that she's incredibly spherical, which is really interesting when we're talking about Hygieia and wholeness and health. But also, she is not pockmarked, meaning she doesn't have a bunch of asteroids that have come and hit her. She doesn't have a bunch of craters. She's pretty like whole, which is also really interesting for Hygieia and her mythology. The only two craters that she has two craters, and they're named the serpents. So she has literally the two serpents on her. So if you know anything about Hygieia and the way her symbol in astrology is the pole with the two serpents, which is the health symbol. And so she has these two serpents on her. But other than that, she doesn't have any other markings. So she's pretty cool. She also has all the ingredients for life, similar to Ceres. So she's got that heart carbon. She has some water. They think ice and water on her as well, which I think is important. But if she were a dwarf planet to become one, because people have been kind of rallying to try to make her a dwarf planet, if she was one, she would be the smallest of all of them. Uh, anyway, that's what I've got on Hygieia, but pretty cool, as we'll get into in a moment.
That's so fun and like excellent foreshadowing. I love it. Let's talk about the myths of Hygieia. What's her story?
Yeah, I can start on this one. Hygieia is always associated with her father, Asclepius. So she is seen as one of the daughters of Asclepius who all have names related to health. So like one of the other daughters is called Panacea, right, which is a universal cure or remedy. There's also Iso, who's recovery, Acesso, which is the healing process, and Igel, I think, for beauty, splendor, and vitality. But the big thing about Hygieia is her name is basically wholeness. It means soundness, health, wholeness. And in all of her mythology, her link to health, there are other goddesses, like, for example, Panacea being this worldwide cure for everything, that are like quick cures. But Hygieia is never seen as a quick cure. So she's always associated with these things that take time, such as hygiene, health, right? A little bit every day, doing something a little bit every day, cleaning things out piece by piece, purifying things over time. She has multiple hymns. There are a bunch of statues of her, and usually they're erected after there's been a epidemic. So like in Greece or in Rome, they will erect statues of her after, because it's always seen that, you know, there was like a challenge, I don't know who did it, but between two guys saying like, why are you erecting statues to Hygieia? How did she help you with this plague? And they're like, she brought us back to wholeness. You know, she's not the panacea, but she brings us back to wholeness piece by piece. So that's really cool about her. She doesn't have as many wild tales like Persephone or Ceres that are associated with her, but she's always seen as this personification of this health and wholeness that is not necessarily immediate, which is kind of fun because Jaye Anne and I just did an episode the other day about herbalism and how it's not fast medicine, how we can't have fast medicine, how feminine medicine is not fast. So I think that's fascinating, and we can chat about that more. Is there anything you want to add, Kayelee?
Yeah, definitely. So with Hygieia, there are quite a few statues of her with her father, but whether she shows up on her own or with her father, she very frequently has a bowl and a serpent, and the serpent is often drinking from the bowl. And the symbolism of that is just really fascinating to me, because the serpent, I mean, has been so vilified, but it's also, before it was vilified, a very feminine symbol. We've talked about it a lot in various episodes of the podcast, but there's this rebirth that comes with the serpent, and with her bowl, it's like, okay, here, let's nourish the ability to be transformed. Let's nourish the ability to be reborn. And I just love that. I love that so much about Hygieia. And yeah, she doesn't have, at least not that I've been able to come across in my studies, she doesn't have, like Julie was saying, a ton of myths. She wasn't talked about tons and tons in relation to like heroic deeds or helping heroes or things like that. But she was very, very revered. And I would like to illustrate that a little bit by reading one of her Orphic hymns, or part of one. Orphic hymn number 68 was translated as "To Hygieia, fumigation from manna, O much desired, prolific general queen. Hear me, life-bearing Hygieia, of beauteous mien, mother of all. By thee diseases dire, of bliss destructive, from our life retire. And every house is flourishing and fair, if with rejoicing aspect thou art there. Each daedal art thy vigorous force inspires, and all the world thy helping hand desires. Hades, life's bane, alone resists thy will, and ever hates thy all-preserving skill. O fertile queen, from thee forever flows to mortal life from agony repose. And men without thy all-sustaining ease find nothing useful, nothing formed to please. That's pretty high praise, I would say. Queen of all, she was a big deal, even though she doesn't have some of the more obvious and gaudy and showing, like a big show of esteem left to history, as far as temples and statues and things, but they do exist. And there are more hymns like that that just are praising Hygieia or asking or begging for her support, because there's this recognition of like, if you are not whole, if you do not have health, what do you have? So yeah. Do we want to talk a little bit about the mythology of her father as it pertains to her?
Well, I just want to say real quick here is like, I love how her stories or lack thereof just underscore the consistency. And one of the things that I talk about with the feminine is like a lot of times the feminine fades into the background because it's so consistent that it's boring. So no, it's not this dramatic story, but even Virgo itself is not a dramatic sign. It's not supposed to be dramatic. Like not everything needs to be dramatic. Some things can be consistent and boring, and that's okay. And Hygieia to me is like so consistent that it's boring. And she has all these statues and people love her, but like, why don't we have these dramatic stories? Well, because I guess that's the point, right? We don't need the drama to have health.
Well, and I think she personifies the very feminine way of a little bit, a drop at a time, rather than this heroic push everything, right? Like push it all and do it right now. And how that is oftentimes even more powerful than that heroic beat, which we need the heroicism too. But these pieces where she's just coming and healing, and I love that she's so tied to wholeness. It's not just one part, right? She's not just one part of your health. She's all aspects of your health. And I wanted to cite a 2005 study. Surprise, I'm going to cite a study. It's me, from the CDC actually, about health. And it was about the top 20 things that have made us healthier and gotten rid of disease and all those kinds of things. And the things that you think would be at the top, like antibiotics and penicillin and all of that kind of stuff, is actually not at the top. At the very, very top is hygiene. Number one. Hygiene, including sewage and making our toilets clean and doing all the things the unsung hero does, right? So we never think about this, but without hygiene, we would still be in kind of the dark ages in our health. And how subtle and how beautiful that feminine piece is the thing, the life water keeping us alive, just like her bowl, I think is like so important to think about her bowl, that life water we can't live without. Those pieces are so important. And then I just want to say one thing about the serpent, and then I'll let Kayelee go because she's got really good stuff. I wanted to say and bring it back to the serpent just a little bit is, what do medical schools still use as the symbol of health? It's still the double serpent with the staff. We still are using that. And even in the Bible, serpents, although we're always like, serpents are so bad, but actually, what does Moses do to cure all the people from being sick? He puts a serpent on a staff, shows it to the people, and all of them are healed. That's the story, right? This is another echoing, as we talked about with Vesta, as we talked about with Ceres, we talked about this so much, but another echoing about how the feminine is often older, and there's always like a feminine counterpart to what we see in the masculine. And we can see in more masculinized religion, the serpent, even though it's feared, it's also revered because it has that dual meaning of life-giving and also all these scary things. But before that, we had Hygieia and the serpent, and the meaning of the serpent of health, of constantly needing to shed your skin piece by piece, doing things in eternal rounds. So I just wanted to point that out, and how beautiful that there happens to be a serpent on the asteroid called Hygieia.
And the fact that those statues show up after an epidemic, to me, is like you're saying, this is how you rebuild. And it just points the way. After this dramatic transformation, little bit by little bit is how you rebuild. Little bit by little bit is how you come out of that. Yes, we have the big craziness happening here. Nourishment is next. And it sort of like nods to this day-to-day thing.
Yeah. What you just described, I feel like, is what I've been living the past 3 months, with having dramatic health shifts. And now there's this slow bit by bit. I feel so frustrated so often because I'm like, I just want it to be better now. Or I like want to do this thing or that thing that will fix everything, but it is very hygiene. Do these little things every day that you think, oh, that's nothing. But in reality, they build up so much over time and can completely transform your health on all levels and your well-being on all levels.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your personal life with us. So how do we work with her astrologically? How do we work with it regardless of sign and house? And then maybe what are some flavors that we should be considering within the concept of sign and house? Opening up the floor.
Is there anything that you wanted to tie in here as we go into this astrological piece, Kayelee, about Hygieia's mythology with her dad more formally with Asclepius? Or do you think we should just go straight to the astrology pieces?
No, I'll share just a little bit. With Asclepius, he's interesting because some myths have him as starting out as a mortal man and some as a god that came into being in a similar fashion to other gods. And he got so good at what he did that he was able to bring someone back to life, and Zeus didn't like that, so he killed him. That's the myth. When Asclepius began as a man, he got so good at healing that Zeus killed him because it was threatening to Zeus. And then I think it was Apollo, but it might have been one of the other gods, was like, hey, let's have mercy on him. And then they turned him into a god, Asclepius. And his daughter, Hygieia, is actually sometimes in some myths is actually his wife instead of his daughter. She's like ever present. Like Asclepius gets more fanfare, I guess you could say. He's this great healer and the physician and all of these things, but Hygieia is always there. She's always present. She's always quiet, maybe, but she's there. That wholeness piece, whether her father is her father or her husband, and whether he began as a mortal or a god, there is this sense of like, he probably couldn't do what he did without her and what she was capable of. And even in the original Hippocratic Oath, first it starts with Apollon, or Apollo, who was called the physician. I swear by Apollon, the physician, and Asclepios, or Asclepius, and Hygieia, and Panacea, or Panacea, and all the gods and goddesses that according to my ability and judgment, I will keep this oath and the stipulation. And then it goes on, the whole do no harm and all that stuff. But after Apollo and Asclepius, it's Hygieia. And I don't know that it truly should be after, because if you don't keep up with hygiene and the day-to-day things that bring you wellness and well-being, it's going to be harder for the physician, in whatever form he takes, to heal you, to help you. He's going to have his work cut out for him because of that lack of the feminine nourishment, in a sense, drinking from that bowl, communing with that snake.
I have so many things I want to say about this now. Oh no. Oh no. I will be super quick because I do want to get to the astrology piece and talk about that. But one thing I want to say is recently I listened to a podcast by Dr. Nathan Riley. He's an OBGYN. He's coming on the show, but he actually is super supportive of midwife birth, and he does home births and is really into helping center the feminine when it comes to birth. And this particular episode, for anyone who wants to find it, I can link it at the bottom of this. We'll link it in the show notes for people. It's excellent, but it's a quote unquote short history of medicine, particularly Western medicine. It's like 2.5 hours long. Okay. So that's the short version that we can give you. And we're also going to talk about this with our good friend Jocelyn Peterson, more from a mental health standpoint. He talked about it more from a giving birth standpoint. But a lot of what he cited, a lot of the sources that he cited and talked about, was how originally, when it comes to medicine, it is women who have written much of the texts. So, for example, people that we look to, even these people like Socrates and Plato and all of these deep thinkers and other thinkers in the health realm, a lot of them actually their mentors, and they admit that their mentors are women. And oftentimes they talk about, so for example, Sir Francis Bacon, who was really big into medicine, but also he has his own form of magic and everything, which was okay for him to practice while women were dying for practicing it, but it's okay for him to practice it. Anyway, he actually says that a woman taught him everything he knew about medicine. Much of the text that we have, I cannot remember her name, but I think it's Aspirus. But anyway, she mentors the big great minds, and she's the one who has written much of the medical texts that we're relied on for over 2,000 years. So like she was the original author on those. And then of course there's Van Hildegard, and she's huge in the space, but they never, women often do not get the credit for this. And so that's what I felt like when you were talking about Hygieia, and she's there, right? She's there with Asclepius. She's always the one doing it, but often we venerate him instead of her, even though she is the one who is the foundation. I mean, hygiene, we have to look at our whole health practices. That is actually the base of your whole health, is those little things you do every day. And so I think her story, just like so many other women's stories, reflects this, exactly what Jaye Anne said, like the feminine gets pushed into the background because it's so steady, it's so sure, and it is the base of everything. And then we honorate or venerate this more heroic medicine more often. And I think we see that throughout history. But if you want to learn more about those texts and those women who wrote amazing medical feats and things that we still use today, you can look at that podcast, and I will link it in the show notes.
I follow a couple of Instagram accounts that just remind me of those things regularly because I need to be regularly reminded. But yes, do it. Find this information because it will help you kind of gain that confidence, because it's not new for women to be doing the things. It's just not new. It is not new. It has literally been just hidden for thousands and thousands of years. It's just the heroic acts show up, and it's like, this is what I did. Yeah, but you were standing on 1,000 women. Stop. No one does anything alone. Anyways, that has nothing to do with Hygieia other than stolen work. Okay, are we ready for astrology? Thanks for bringing us back to Hygieia's father, because that was an important piece that we wanted to talk about. But are we ready for astrology? Yeah? Okay, so what does it mean when you have a prominent Hygieia? What does Hygieia do in your chart? How does that work?
So, in my experience with Hygieia in astrology, wherever she is can be an area of life where you need to take your health and your well-being very seriously, or you're going to discover that your body has to scream at you before you will listen to it, and you won't like the screaming. And I don't mean that in a threatening way. That sounded kind of threatening, because Hygieia is not threatening. There's a very practical, like down to earth, of course, like this is just how it works. B follows A and it goes all the way to Z. There's a pattern to things with Hygieia. And also with Hygieia, as we've talked about before, there's this small and simple things. And so if you feel like your life is going crazy, or especially your health, and I don't just mean your physical health, but also like your mental health, your relational health, anything you want to throw in front of health, if you find that it's not going well, look to your Hygieia sign and location and start doing small and simple things related to those energies, and you'll be astonished at how things start to shift over time. And it might be a little hard to see at first, or if you're not paying attention, it might be hard to see ever, because it's so foundational. It's so in the background. It's so, I don't know, ubiquitous maybe. The changes that come with Hygieia, any area of your life you're talking about, it's almost like they creep in a non-creepy way. And suddenly you're like years down the road and it's like, wow, everything is different related to that now because of this little thing, this little tweak. Hygieia's location can also give you some insight into some areas where either your constitution is really great and you don't need a lot of help, or where you're going to struggle a bit with your well-being and you need to kind of shore up and support that area. Anybody want to add to any of that?
Yeah, I love that. I think that's totally true with Hygieia. I did want to speak to her nature a little bit. My mother has Hygieia conjunct her sun, and everyone always thinks she's a Virgo, but she's not. She's a double Libra. And so even though she is just over, she's like a 1 degree Libra. But Hygieia also has this kind of constitution of exactly what Kayelee said, this purifying thing, right? So I do find that Hygieia can also alert alert us to where we might be over judgmental of ourselves or others, and where we might need to be careful about nitpicking. Are we nitpicking ourselves? Are we nitpicking other people? Are we being too tied to putting things in order before we can move forward? Are we judging other people when they don't have it together in this space, or judging ourselves for the same thing? And when I do locational astrology with people, I'll say specifically, I need somewhere that's good for my health, to tell me where I can get abundance for my health. And so I do look at Hygieia lines, particularly with a benefic, right? Like Jupiter Hygieia can be really helpful and beneficial for your health. Just like Chiron with Hygieia can sometimes be both a healer and a detriment, right? It can both make you an amazing healer, an amazing physician. Like, what a great line for someone who does want to be a doctor, a healer, whatever, a Chiron Hygieia line, but can also be difficult. But I also always warn people, especially when they come to me and they're talking about judgments, I always look for that Hygieia line, because she can make us a little judgy about things in our lives. So, and I think that goes perfectly with what Kayelee said, because it's the small things that we need to watch out for. It's those small things that we need to put into place to make ourselves more healthy in that area, especially if we have been judging ourselves in that area. I would also say, like, she can be the sacred and the mundane, kind of like the sixth house. Those areas of our life that we need to take seriously and with sacredness. I just sent both Jaye Anne and Kayelee this reel of this woman who is doing her chores, and she's like, I'm not just sweeping, I'm clearing intentions for my, like, every little chore that she does. She makes the chore into something so special. She's like, I'm not making the bed, I'm laying the foundation for my daughter's dream world, or whatever she says. That's how we need to look at Hygieia a little bit. And those pieces, what are the things that we find so mundane that we need to make sacred, right? What are those things and those pieces of us? And I would say now, with more of this perspective of Hygieia, she may even give us insight into places where we feel our consistency is hidden. Maybe like our consistency is hiding us and we're feeling the back burner, even though we are doing the things. So she gives us lots of great stuff. Anything else you want to add, Jan?
So good. Hygieia traditionally rules Virgo, and in resonant astrology also rules Virgo, right? Kayelee,
Yeah.
am I
Well,
saying something weird?
I was going to say, well, traditionally, Mercury rules Virgo.
Well, okay, so Mercury rules, right? It depends on what tradition you're talking about. You're right. So Mercury rules Virgo, and then a lot of people just threw all the asteroids to Virgo. To me, it's like all of the asteroid goddesses are just got to be in the Virgin category. Why? Okay, cool. But we're really going to put Chiron in there too. So there's this weird hierarchy of like Mercury rules it, but it also rules Gemini. But Chiron is like the secondary most ruler. But then we've got all these asteroid goddesses that we're going to throw in there too, because they're girls. So obviously they have to be virgins. That's how that went. And I have a trouble with Mercury as the ruler of Virgo. And that's probably just my Gemini going, no, that's mine. Why does Virgo get like 67 rulers? Like, whatever. You don't need that guy. So anyways, that's my weird little soapbox on the rulers of Virgo, because I don't think we've talked about Virgo quite as in depth as some of the other signs, because we were working with Cancer and Ceres, we were working with Leo and Vesta. I almost called her Hestia, and I was like, yes, also that would be right too, but it would confuse some people. But with the Virgo piece there, and the sixth house, I just want to be clear, like in resonant astrology, it is also Virgo. And not just for reasons that we're just going to chuck an asteroid goddess into Virgo, for very clear reasons. So can you talk about that for like a little bit, Kayelee?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, when I was feeling into the whole process of resonant astrology, when it came to Virgo, yeah, there was this sense of like Mercury fits and also doesn't fit. It feels like there's something else here. And Chiron didn't feel right to me either, because Chiron is its own, like there's significance to Chiron. Chiron doesn't need the weight of being the ruler of a sign and house as well. Chiron is all about lots of things and shoulders a lot of things having to do with like your ultimate your ultimate mastery and your deepest wound and your deepest healing and your capacity to bridge the personal and the generational. So I was like, that's a lot for Chiron to carry. He doesn't need to be in charge of a sign and house too. That doesn't make sense. And Hygieia just stood out to me so much, especially as I researched her more and just felt into her energy, that she lines up so beautifully with Virgo and the sixth house, because there's this attention to detail, there's this purification that goes with Hygieia and with Virgo, and then the whole small and simple things, the stuff you do on the daily to maintain your well-being. It's very, very sixth house energy. So it just made sense logically to me for Hygieia to rule Virgo and the sixth house, but it also made sense intuitively to me. It was definitely a process of more masculine thinking and more feminine thinking, I guess you could phrase it, for coming to Hygieia as no, Hygieia is the ruler in resonant astrology, is the ruler of Virgo in the sixth house. And I don't know, I think she was actually the first asteroid goddess that I put in a place of rulership, because it just came across so clearly that, yep, she takes over Virgo and the sixth house. Yeah, she was the first one that I placed of the asteroid goddesses.
Yeah, and I think with that, we could talk a little bit about Virgo itself and that relationship, kind of like we did with Leo, right? We talked about Leo, we talked about Cancer a little bit. So I would say for Virgo, again, it's an earth sign. It is a mutable earth sign, which means it is finishing things up, and it is also very adaptable and changeable, which, like, I feel like Virgo is the least mutable sign of all the mutables in certain ways. At the same time, it is, yeah, Earth is not very mutable by itself, really. But I always see Virgo as kind of fertile soil, right? Like this fertile soil aspect of it's getting ready to grow things. There's a lot you have to do and cultivate. I mean, Jaye Anne can speak to this way more with her gardening, but there's a ton you've got to do with the earth and the soil before the seeds can really grow and sprout. Like you've got to, lots of times you have to check your soil acidity, or you have to make sure there's not clay, or you have to do all this stuff. And in the same way, I think Virgo is very passionate about purification and making sure that the stage is set properly. And so that's why Virgo kind of gets this reputation of being judgy, or of coming off as sometimes harsh, or being focused on lists and task making and making all the worksheets, which they can, again, very practical, sensible. That is definitely going to be someone who has those Virgo placements. But I do often find, true to the rulership of Hygieia, people who have Virgo placements often, oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many times, they almost always go into like medicine, health, or beauty. But usually when it's beauty, it's like this hairstylist or someone who deals with the hygiene pieces of that. Tons of times they're nurses. Like I said, like with my mom, she's got Hygieia on her son. She is a nurse. She's been a nurse her entire life, right? So there is this sense of they really are focused on the health world, where the other earth signs are not always that way. They can be, but Virgo particularly has an affinity for health stuff and hygiene stuff and making things. If you're not into that, then it's usually the sciences or mathematics and that have to do with organizing things, because Virgo's very good at organizing things, putting things together, and definitely does have her own sensitivity to her as well. We don't often talk about that, but earth signs really care. Man, they care. That's why they do things. They're not just trying to be rude to you. They like just really care about it. And like Virgos, they really care about things. And I think our dear friend Ali Duzette, when I chat with her, like, man, does that girl care, right? She cares so much, but she's also never going to, because she cares so much about certain things, like she will always be the one who's going to do the dishes in her house, regardless of how tired she is. She's always going to be cleaning the thing. She's always going to do it, because if you're a Virgo, you're the over server, probably. You're like giving and doing the things when you're like, why are these people not paying attention to the details? These details matter over here. I would say that that's very Virgo-esque. And my one warning about Virgo before I let Jaye Anne talk, because I know she's got good stuff too, is I will say Virgo tends to, when it's not in a good place, become the martyr it really tends to become the martyr. I have to do everything for everybody else. I got to put the team on my back and I've got to drag myself. And there is a little bit, kind of like with all the mutable signs, just a touch. There is this, I don't know how else to say it, but this a little bit of like piety to it. Like, I'm doing it because I am the good person who will do the good thing and I will die for everyone so they can live, right? Like, I will clean up after the party all by myself because no one else will help me, regardless of if you asked for help. But like, I will do it even though no one else will do it. So there is a
Or if
little
you
bit of,
turned down the help that people offered. I see
yes,
that with
oh my
Virgo
gosh,
energy
yes,
sometimes
yes,
because they
yes,
won't do it
turning
right.
down the help, yes, oh my gosh, yeah. So, but there is that little bit of like, I'm doing it as a good person, whereas someone who's like the Capricorn moon in me is like, yeah, I carry everything because I gotta get crap done. Okay, that's all I care about. I care about getting the crap done and being on top. Whereas Virgo is like, I care about everyone and their well-being, so I must do it right because I'm a good person. So anyway, that's the difference. There you go.
It's funny. Well, I think that Virgo lends itself to that because of its connection with the divine and because of its connection with everyday sacredness, right? It's opposing Pisces, which is like grand sacredness and this big, lofty idea of sacredness. But Virgo is very much about like day to day. Everything I do right now is a microcosm of that Piscean sacredness. So it's like super important to them, not necessarily to everybody else. The one thing that I found was really interesting statement that somebody said, it stuck with me, is that women's work, right? Traditionally, women's work. And when I say traditionally, I don't mean as we've been socialized. What I mean is as a primitive people, women's work is to sort out that which is nourishing and that which is not nourishing. And down to the point of like sorting grains of rice and going, this grain of rice is not for my family. This grain of rice is not for my well-being and my health, and getting down to those nitty-gritty details. To me, that is just how Virgo is. And that's why they're judgy, is not because, and I say they because I don't have a lot of Virgo placements. But anyways, this is where the judginess is. It's not because they think everybody's wrong. It's just because they're sorting out that which is nourishing, that which is not. And they're literally splitting hairs. Like, that's their job to do that.
They're very discerning. Virgo energy and Hygieia energy is very discerning.
Yeah, so what else do we have to say about this? Or do you want to move forward into something in more details? What do we got?
Should we do Hygieia by element? I think that would be good.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so we'll start with fire, as we do. As we do. What is Hygieia in a fire sign?
Fire. I actually have Hygieia in a fire sign. Oh, everyone tell everyone where your Hygieia is. I guess maybe that's too personal. No.
Nope, I'm fine saying where my Hygieia is. So my Hygieia is in Aquarius and it's conjunct my North Node in the 3rd house.
Fancy. My Hygieia is in Gemini in my 4th house, and it is aspecting 0 things.
Aspecting 0 things. Truth. I actually pulled up her chart. But in whole sign, it's in the 5th house, which is kind of fun. Yeah, the only asteroid that's touching it, which we don't need to go into, is Estrella. So hard to change. I mean, that's how I would read that. So anyway, we can talk about that later. My Hygieia is in Leo. It's in my 10th house. It is not quite conjunct Juno and my midheaven, which are conjunct. It's like 6 degrees from them. So I wouldn't say totally. They're not really conjunct, but definitely in that 10th house spot. So I guess I'll start by being a human who has a fire Hygieia. Honestly, I think it reminds me a little bit of when we did Palace, and maybe that's because I've also got Palace in a fire sign. But I would say for me, in fire placements, again, that Hygieia is gonna say like you've got to take care of yourself first. That's what I would say, because fire needs to shine. It needs to feel loved and adoration. If you don't like the word adoration, I know some people who will not like that, as with prominent fire signs, but it needs to be viewed, seen. It needs to be seen and appreciated. That's the right word, appreciated. So I think having Hygieia in Leo for me is all about taking small steps in leadership. So growing up, I'd always say that like I was never the leader. I was always like the leader's best friend. you know? I'm always like the supporting role in that way, and doing kind of, that's my hygienist, is I don't have to necessarily take the spotlight. I can if I need to, I will. Like in a group, I will naturally do that, but usually I am like the steady person, right? Like in the group projects, I am the person who the things land on. Like that's very Hygieia, and a fire sign is like, okay, no one else will take the leadership role. You take it, you run with it. I think for me, it's a wake up call of, oh, I think I do need appreciation more than I thought. And I didn't ever see myself as being appreciated, especially when I was younger, because I would do a lot of those pieces. But I think Hygieia and a fire sign could definitely be someone who needs that appreciation, needs that to focus little by little on allowing yourself to shine piece by piece, and that being okay. Like it's okay to shine in your daily tasks. It's okay to shine in your daily work. And I don't know, maybe because that's what I have, I'm having a really hard time explaining it. But if anyone else wants to take
You're
over,
doing great. You're doing
yeah,
great.
you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, what popped into my head was that with Hygieia and a fire sign, people who have that need to be very discerning about how they use their energy. Because if they're using their passion, their energy, and their life force for things that are not contributing to their well being, first and foremost, that they're going to burn out faster than the average person, or burn out more spectacularly than the average person. But if they tend their own fire, if they really focus on utilizing their energy for things that they feel passionate about, it's going to be easier for them to then serve other people if they want to, which they probably will want to.
I will say one thing that popped in my head, and I think this might be particularly Leo-ish of this, is like I love to be people's biggest cheerleader. I think that's one of the things I can do really well, is I'm super good at giving people compliments, but it's not contrived. That's the thing. It's not contrived. It's like legit. And that's why, especially when I was younger, I feel like I'm not showing it as well as an adult. But especially in college, I was really known for that, for like being everybody's like cheerleader and like cheering everybody on and being happy for everybody, which is like a very Leo thing. Okay, go ahead, Jan.
Can I just pop in really quick? Julie, yeah, definitely. You are good at that. I tell my husband that you're my hype girl. You give me pep talks that put me in tears in a good way. So, yes, I would say that very much relates to your Hygieia, and especially Hygieia in Leo. You so deeply need that recognition and being seen, and that for you, on some level, like, it's the greatest gift you can give to other people because it fuels you so much. So you're like, that will fuel other people. I must give it. And I think that would be true of, yeah, especially Hygieia in Leo, but even the other fire signs with Hygieia. Okay, and I will not in again.
I was just going to say, I feel like self-care is particularly important to fire signs, and it could go either way, right? Like either it's super easy for them to put themselves first when it comes to taking care of self. Like that's the person that's like, I just go to bed on time because that's how it works. There's no question about that. Or the opposite could be true, where I don't feel like it's okay to take care of self first to the extreme that I need to be burnt out before I self-care, right? Like, so it could go either way, right? We always have that high side and that low side. But I feel like fire is going to have a lot of question about self and self-care, and a lot of that jumping back and forth on either side of that spectrum.
I just thought of something else really quickly. With fire energy in general, wherever you have fire, but especially if you have Hygieia in fire, the way you move your body, the exercise that you engage in is going to be very crucial. And that it be something that actually feels good to your body, not something that you just should do because somebody told you you should do it.
That's a good one. That's something we often forget about fire, but it is very much like that. Fire and air kind of have these travel pieces, right, attached to them, and that has to do with like how you move your body. So I think it's a little bit true. Well, I guess with air, it's gonna be more your mind. So should we go? Okay, never mind. We're supposed to. No, we're not
Let's
supposed
keep
to.
going.
We're
Earth
supposed to
is
go
next.
to Earth is next. Let's go to Earth next.
Should we jump around everywhere? Maybe? No, maybe not. Maybe not. What does Hygieia in an earth sign do? It's kind of comfy there. right? It's just going to make sense, I think. But let's get a little more nuance.
One thing that I want to be sure to get out there about Hygieia in an earth sign is that for people who have that, nutrition and being dialed in on their nutrition is going to be very, very important. What they eat, how they eat. And they're going to probably be more prone to nitpicking how they eat and potentially falling into patterns of disordered eating because of that potential for perfectionism that could creep in. So as a caution, pay attention to how you fuel your body and how you nourish your body with food, but don't beat yourself up over it. Be discerning, not cruel.
Yeah, I think the building blocks are going to be important as it is with Earth. Earth is all these deep essentials that lay the foundation. So making sure your foundation is good and doing the little things to make sure that you have a good foundation. I would say, like Kayelee said, with Earth, the caution is going to be over nitpicking yourself, over nitpicking others, that judgment piece. Fire can do that too. Fire can be overly judgmental also. They just come from a little bit of different places, I would say. With fire, it's more like, well, I can see light and I can see dark. Like, I know the difference and like it just is what it is. With Earth, it's a little bit more like, your foundation's off, right? Like, that's not practical or pragmatic. That's like not the way that we can build things. So like go back to the building blocks. But yeah, just being careful about nitpicking yourself, but also gives that gift and that talent of making things sacred in the mundane, maybe more of an attachment to that health piece and the wholeness of health and those foundations, and doing routines probably gives a little bit of ability to organize. And that maybe part of your big needs is organization. Like if you're not feeling healthy, maybe you need to look at not just how your food is organized, but also about how is your house organized? How is your life organized? How is your work organized? Looking at that organization and order piece might be a big anchor for health in an earth sign.
Yeah. Environment's going to be very crucial to Hygieia in an earth sign. If your environment feels good to you, if it's contributing to your well-being, if it's healthy in a sense versus if it's detrimental to your well-being, Hygieia in an earth sign is going to be even more sensitive to that than other people.
It's so good. So good. I don't have anything more to say about that. That was so fantastic. Honestly, I couldn't add anything. I love that about the nutritional piece and the environmental. It's so good. Okay, let's move forward then to air signs. Kayelee and I both have Hygieia and air signs. Woohoo. But what should us and others like us, the weirdos, just kidding, 1/4 of the population, what should we be considering when we're looking at our charts and we have Hygieia and an air sign?
I think you should start, Jaye Anne.
I should start.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, I will say that overthinking is definitely a problem. So thinking too much about thinking as an act of self-care instead of actually doing as a self-care is a pitfall that I run into. But also mental health and repetitive mental health is really important. So this is how I got into all of this, is just rewriting little bits of reprogramming every single day in my inner world for the last 14 years, and really line by line by line by line. Like that's so Hygieia of like, I'm going to go through every little piece. I'm going to go through every year of my childhood. I'm going to go through every story from every different angle to recreate new beliefs in my life. So that air sign is going to be very thought oriented when it comes to hygiene, when it comes to those little bits and pieces. But I will say that stuff really snowballs, and it's really cool to see how doing that work little bit by little bit starts to snowball. Kayelee, what are your thoughts? What do you experience?
I would definitely echo what you just said as far as like mental health is very, very crucial for people who have Hygieia in an air sign. There's going to be potential for struggling with thoughts, struggling with your own psychology, and or potential for being really skilled at utilizing your thoughts and your psychology for your well-being and the well-being of others, especially if your Hygieia is in Aquarius, which is where mine is. And that's definitely something that, like, whenever I learn something, my brain immediately goes to, how can I share that with other people? How can I help other people with that? Before I even implement it myself. So like I have to make sure, no. Implement it yourself first. Have some experience with it. But other things that are important for people who have Hygieia and air sign are sleep and breathing, which may sound kind of funny, but sleep is so utterly vital, and sleep hygiene for people who have Hygieia and an air sign. Sleep will make or break you in a lot of ways, your well-being for anybody, but especially for somebody with Hygieia in an air sign. And then breathing, how you breathe. Are you breathing deeply enough? Are you breathing shallowly? Breath is so very connected to our psychology as well as our bodies. It's very much this bridge between the mind and the body. And for someone with Hygieia in an air sign, breath work, intentional breath work, even if it's simple breath work, can be incredibly valuable for maintaining their health and their well-being.
Those are really great points. I don't know that I have anything better than that, than the two air people can say on it. But yeah, just being careful not to nitpick your thoughts so much. That was the first thing that came to mind. And also judging. I was thinking about judging logic, judging people's thought processes might be a thing, like judging the way people think, could definitely be a thing for Virgo, for Hygieia.
Why?
In an
Why
air
are
sign.
you? Why are you reading my mind? That's weird. I didn't even know I was thinking. That was like my biggest downfall this entire year. Was like, you guys are so wrong, and it's like total strangers on the internet, and I'm like, y'all are so wrong. I woke up at 3 a.m. the other night. And I was just like sitting there, and this is funny because you said about the breathing, Kayelee. And I was sitting there, and my husband was like, "What is wrong?" And I was like, "Nothing's wrong." He's like, "No, you're breathing funny. Something's wrong." And I was just like, genetics this and da, 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 like all these thoughts and words and science articles that I had like sitting there in my brain at 3 o'clock in the morning after I had slept for 5 hours. I mean, to be fair, it all just came out and I just needed to say it. And he's like, "Why do you care what people think?" And I was like, because they're stupid and wrong. But why do you care? I don't know. But that's the thing. It's like, that's why I care. I care because it there's something to be said for the collective hygiene of the mentality that I contribute to, and how am I contributing to the mentality of the collective, and where am I, maybe adding some mental bacteria or prions, or where can I help clean that up? Like that's why I do what I do. So this is a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, a little bit. That Hygieia in Gemini, though it's not really particularly aspected, quite important, coming in coming in handy right there.
Right.
I love that you brought up your husband said you were breathing funny, because my husband can almost always tell that something is off with me, especially like the way I'm thinking, because my breathing will change. And it's subtle, and he only catches it because he's known me so long and he pays attention. He'll be like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "What's wrong?" Or he'll say, "What are you thinking?" I'm like, "Well, I thought this." And he's like, "I knew that. Like, I knew it." I'm like, "What do you mean you knew it?" He's like, "Your breathing changed." I'm like, "What?" But it's truly a thing, especially if you have Hygieia in an air sign.
Well, I could see also it might be tough. I don't know about, I keep thinking about the nature of air and weighing both sides, or wanting things to be even, and how that might be affected by Hygieia, kind of this over analysis, right? Being really analytical about, is this even? Is this good? Is this right? Is this wrong? Like going back and forth about, all the viewpoints of all the things, like Jaye Anne was saying. I can see that definitely play out for an air sign, but also might make you quite gifted, honestly, in stuff like analytics and putting things together, and putting together the data and the spreadsheets and the words, or maybe it makes you an incredible writer and quite talented at that as well, because you can see the details. Like a great placement for an editor, right? Great placement for a book editor actually could be Hygieia in an air sign. And also, if you have it in Libra, maybe there is over analysis of relationships going on and the balance of relationships. That would be my guess. But anyway, there you go.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I had some ahas about myself from what you said. So thank you, Julie.
Let's talk about Hygieia and water.
Water, hygiene and water. Of course, we're going to talk about emotionality and spirituality when we talk about Hygieia and water. And I think this is what I keep thinking. I keep thinking about Hygieia and water is the person who is like, I will never be good enough because I didn't love all the people and do all the things, like, because earth could be more doing things, or you could say earth or fire or whatever. But I do think with water, there's an emotional attachment to the value of I didn't show enough of my love, or I didn't give enough of my emotional piece, or I'm not intuitive enough, or I'm not connected, or whatever that piece is. I think that's very watery. And I think Hygieia could make you overly critical of, just watch out for your emotional health and of your interactions with people and your personal emotions. It could cause someone to cut off their emotions because they do not want to be seen as being emotional. They want to be more analytical. They want to be more practical, but always trying to, on the hard side, maybe you're trying to control other people's emotions a little bit, like trying to make it okay, make everything okay in those ways, and that being really important to you. I would say connection being really important, and even it could be spirituality, but I do think water has this connection piece, like it wants to feel really emotionally connected to everybody and everything. And so with that, with Hygieia in a water sign, just be careful, take the small steps to make sure that you feel emotionally sound and safe, that you have good boundaries. I'm always going to say that a million times when it comes to water and air. Have good boundaries and, do the little things each day that you need to take care of yourself emotionally. Make that a top priority, because otherwise I could definitely see this becoming super judgmental on itself. Often I hear people with lots of water placements, the words are often like, I'm not good enough. Like I wasn't enough. I'm not enough. And not that anyone can't say that. You can, but I would say water often goes to that. And maybe because it's so essential to everyone, and that like water itself is so essential, that maybe it feels like if I'm not doing my job, I'm just not good enough. So I would be careful about that with hygiene and water.
I could see someone with hygiene water placements having a lot of the experience of, I don't look for drama, but drama finds me, because they're very into this nitpicking the way people say things, the tonality, the word choice, but not from an analytical perspective per se, but more from a, that made me feel yucky and you're doing it wrong. Let me tell you how to do it right. And that might not go so well. That might rub people the wrong way and have them create quote drama when it's like, how does the drama find me? Or it just might be an energetic that's being put out of like, I'm going to judge you the minute I walk in the door. And even if it's a new person, and then they go, here comes the drama, because water loves drama. Water loves high drama. and the reason why this particular combination is going to be so high drama is because it is this sorting piece. It is this, let's get to the nitty gritty, and at the same time in the emotional realm. And I find that when we are nitpicking emotions, it's highly irritating. It's very powerful. It can be very powerful. Like I don't mean to say this is all going to be terrible. What I mean to say is you have to be very discerning on who you're choosing to communicate those concerns with and how you say it, because every single time you point the finger, there's always going to be three pointing back at you, particularly with water hygiene placements.
I just want to add to that when you have Hygieia in a water sign, there can be a tendency to more than the average label emotions as bad. Like to say, I'm not allowed to have this emotion or that emotion. I can only have this emotion and this emotion. And to do that to the self, but also potentially do that to other people, and to make it like a matter of your worthiness, almost like your goodness. Like, I'm not a good person if I feel X emotion. I'm not a good person if I feel Y emotion. But on the flip side of that, someone with Hygieia and a water sign can be very discerning about their own emotions and recognize like, this is just what I'm feeling right now. This doesn't mean anything about me or about the other person. This is giving me this information, not that information, which is really skillful use of emotional intelligence. Hygieia and water, you have that capacity to be so skillful when it comes to emotional intelligence. And then tending your emotional needs is very important. But then also hydration, making sure that your body is well hydrated, and not just with water and electrolytes, but also with oils and healthy oils. Like your overall well-being, not just your physical well-being, is going to be very dependent on how hydrated you are, as well as how you are handling your emotions.
Yeah, I think that's super great. And I was just going to say the emotional intelligence bit. You can have good things with this too. It's not all bad. I guess that's what I want to say is not all the things are all bad. You can have a lot of skills in this area as well.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about personal experiences throughout this, but what are some little bits of practical wisdom that we want to share about working with Hygieia a little bit more? What should we be doing when we're working with our Hygieia?
The first thing I was going to say is when I look, I often find, and I've said this before, but when Hygieia is making a harsh aspect or a conjunction with someone like Mars or Saturn. So when I say a harsh aspect, I mean an opposition or a square, or that conjunction with Mars or Saturn, I do find more people really do get sick. Like it definitely is a thing. Health plays out big in that way. And even going back to when Jaye Anne, it was literally just Jaye Anne and I talked about the eclipse in September, and like we didn't know what was going to happen with Kayelee. One of the big points I made was there's a big harsh aspect between, I think it was Hygieia and Saturn. There's going to be a bunch of health stuff that happens. And surprise, surprise, there was. And not just for you, but like for Jaye Anne also and her family, even playing out before, and my family, so many people. So I do think it is a real thing that Hygieia does. She does definitely play into helping us understand, is the collective healthy and what are they struggling with collectively. And so for you, if you're looking at your own chart, maybe look for those harsh aspects. Are there harsh aspects with your Hygieia and Mars or Saturn? Or is something transiting your Hygieia, and that might be a source of health issues? And you can kind of go to what planet is transiting and kind of figure out, okay, this is the planet that's transiting. This is how it could relate health wise. This is what I could do with my health to help Hygieia, or even looking at the house, right? So like for me, I have Hygieia in the 10th. And sometimes when I have big transits across the 10th in Leo, I will have some career stuff come up, like needing to look at my career health, what's happening to the health of my career, what's going on with me. But it also can be visible stuff because the 10th house is visible things. So I think that's a really practical thing. Your Hygieia really does affect your overall well-being in all those areas, and just making sure you look at carefully what she is aspecting and what's aspecting her.
So good. So true. I ran my solar return from 2011 a few years ago because that was the year that I lost all this weight, started working with energetics, blah, blah, blah. I was like, what the heck was going on that year for me? And so Hygieia was a major player in that. So I wanted to just highlight that really quickly. But first of all, I had a loaded first house, which indicates the physical body. I had Pallas, Vesta, Chiron, Neptune, and Ceres in my first house, all in Pisces. Well, a little bit in Aquarius, but in Pisces. But Hygieia was in Scorpio, conjunct very close to my midheaven. Not quite my midheaven, but close to my midheaven. So that tells me that it was like basically my job to transform my health. And I've never been the kind of person, I've always said I'm like not a maintenance person, like whatever, do it, don't do it, I don't care. But that year I was so focused on every single day, I feel 1% better with my health. That is a major shift forward. That's enough for me. Previously, when people talk about like changing your health, it's usually a euphemism for I want to get skinny. And that while that happened, that wasn't the goal. The goal was little bits every single day and just get a little bit of that hit of transformation, a little bit of feeling better, a little tiny bits. And it's so funny that, and it's conjunct the part of fortune too. Hygieia in Scorpio at that time of my life was like super, super powerful. So I want to tell you guys, like, this stuff works, and you don't have to have a loaded first house and Hygieia in Scorpio in your solar return chart in order to make that happen. But do work with your Hygieia where it is to find what is that next little goal. Because when we have these like huge goals, like I want to lose like 50 pounds, like, first of all, where's that come from? Why are we doing that? Why are we obsessed with that, whatever that is? And second of all, if that is genuinely a health thing for you to do, the big picture isn't the point. It's the day-to-day activity. And that's where we look at Hygieia for. So that's my soapbox on how I work with Hygieia sometimes. But also a lot of times I ignore her because I don't like being a maintenance person. Not a maintenance person, and I hate it. And sometimes life forces me to be a maintenance person, and I hate that too.
Thank you for sharing that, Jaye Anne. That's very relatable. And like in my work with resonant astrology, it's come to me over and over again that Hygieia is a key to wholeness. And we're talking health, yes, but also in the sense of purification. Like, are you going to purify, cleanse, let go of, however you want to phrase it, the things that keep you from being whole? And are you going to lean into the things that help you be more whole? I think of Hygieia as the holistic healer in the truest sense. And so if you're in need of holistic healing on some level, whether it's physical, emotional, or the core of who you are, work with your Hygieia. Like, where is she? What sign is she in? We talked about some things that can help fire signs and earth signs and air signs and water signs with Hygieia. Look at those things and allow it to be simple. Allow it to be small. Recognize that, hey, this can build and build and build and help me be more whole. And yeah, I totally also relate to this idea of like, sometimes I want to ignore Hygieia because it's not always fun to do the maintenance. It's not always exciting. It's not always easy to be consistent, but it is so, so vital. And like, I don't know, I've just learned that lesson so many times over the past few months. And I think I'm going to be learning it a lot more with Hygieia conjunct my North Node. Just this idea of like, it's small and simple things, miraculous things. I am excited to listen to what you guys recorded about herbalism because my whole health craziness of the past few months has led me to herbalism. And this idea that it's not dramatic healing, it's soul level healing, it's whole healing, it's healing the entirety of you, not just physically. And I think that's what Hygieia is meant for. And her placement in your chart can give you insight into how you holistically, truly holistically, can heal and be more whole.
Amen. I say we wrap it up with that one. I think that's a perfect take on Hygieia. She helps you come back to your wholeness.
That's so good. Yes. Thank you. All right. Well, if you enjoyed this, well, send us a text or something. We love to hear from you. We really do, all the time. And you're going to hear me say, if you love this, again, later after I turn this off, but whatever. We love connecting with you. So just come hang out, whatever. Links are in the show notes, guys. Come hang out. All right. Have a great week, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. Please make sure to give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening and share with someone you know. See you next week.